The boys spent 2 full seasons turning Soldier Boy into the only man capable of destroying Homelander. They built his radioactive chest blast as the weapon the show had been searching for. They gave him one of the most psychologically complex dynamics in the entire series, a father-son relationship with Homelander that neither man could survive intact. They positioned him as the variable that changed everything. And then quietly, without ceremony, they removed him from the story before the finale even started. His last scenes aired in episode 7, not the finale, not the confrontation everyone was waiting for, just gone before the final episode even started. And here's the thing, that wasn't even the worst part, because Soldier Boy was just one of the promises the boys spent 7 years making, and 1 episode breaking. And once you start counting those broken promises, you realize the problem goes much deeper than a missing character. The problem is what the finale reveals about what this show actually was. The Boys was built on a very specific promise, not just superheroes are bad or corporations are evil. Those are surface readings. The real promise was deeper. The show promised consequences, real, earned, and irreversible consequences, for a world that had given unlimited power to people who never deserved it. It promised a reckoning, not just for Homelander, but for the society that created him, celebrated him, chose fear and spectacle over truth. Every season pushed that promise further. The government fell. Homelander took control. Millions worshipped him. The show kept asking, what happens when a society decides it wants a god? What we actually got was 3 people in a room, a quiet kill, and credits rolling like it was any other episode. It plays less like a finale than an epilogue that forgot the climax. And I know what the defense sounds like. The finale was emotionally satisfying. Characters got proper endings. It didn't need to be explosions. The Boys didn't just fail to deliver on scale. It failed to deliver on its own thesis. And those are completely different failures. Here's where it gets specific, and specific is where the real frustration lives. Season 5 spent 6 episodes building toward Compound V1, the original formula, true immortality, the upgrade that would make Homelander genuinely unkillable, the thing that would finally push the show's central conflict to its actual breaking point. 6 episodes, with every storyline bending toward this one moment. Soldier Boy handing Homelander V1 at the end of episode 6 felt like the show finally committing, finally saying, now we find out how this actually ends. And then, Kimiko drained his powers in the finale. 1 scene. The entire V1 arc, 6 episodes of buildup, rendered completely irrelevant by an ability the show introduced at the exact moment it needed a solution. Think about what that structure reveals. The show built a problem it didn't know how to solve, so it invented a solution in the final episode. That's not storytelling. That's a creative team writing themselves into a corner and hoping the audience wouldn't notice. They noticed. But it goes deeper than V1. Because Soldier Boy's absence isn't just about a missing fight scene, it's about what it reveals about the show's willingness to follow through. Season 3's Soldier Boy arc was some of the best television the boys ever produced. The father-son dynamic between him and Homelander, 2 men who couldn't give each other what they needed, who briefly tried and then destroyed each other, that was writing at the level the show was capable of at its absolute best. Season 5 reintroduced him with purpose. Built the rules around his power, his chest blast could strip Compound V, could strip immortality. The show even demonstrated this on Bombsight in episode 6, clearly setting up the mechanic for the finale. Every narrative signal pointed toward one conclusion. The show spent 2 seasons setting the table, then skipped dinner entirely. His last scenes aired in episode 7. When the finale arrived, Soldier Boy wasn't there. The weapon the show spent 2 seasons building, gone. The confrontation 2 seasons of television had been orbiting never happened. That's not subversion. That's abandonment. And the audience felt it, not because they wanted an action scene, but because they'd invested emotionally in that resolution. They'd earned it. Here's what makes all of this worse mechanically, structurally worse. The marketing for Season 5 included imagery of Homelander floating in space, looking down at Earth while the planet burned beneath him. That image went everywhere. It was a visual promise. This is the scale of what's coming. The finale took place almost entirely in a few rooms. The Deep died in the ocean. Oh Father died in a hallway. Homelander died in the Oval Office. 3 confrontations that should have shaken the world finished quietly, with a finality that felt less like earned resolution and more like a production running out of resources before running out of story. Whether it was budget limitations, production constraints, or creative caution, the finale often feels strangely small for a story that spent years escalating toward collapse. Homelander told Starlight in Season 3 what he'd do if the world turned against him. The White House, the Pentagon, New York off the map. The show put those words in his mouth for a reason, because that's what the finale was supposed to feel like, not literally, emotionally. Instead, the world barely noticed. And then there's Butcher, and this one is personal. 5 seasons, one defining conviction. Every soup alive needs to die. Not Homelander specifically, all of them. That ideology was what made Butcher genuinely dangerous. Not his strength, but his willingness to follow the logic of his belief wherever it led, regardless of who got hurt, including people he loved. That tension between Butcher's mission and his capacity for connection was the show's most interesting moral question. Could someone defined entirely by hatred find a reason to stop? And if they did, would it feel like growth or surrender? The finale chose surrender and called it growth. Butcher kills one soup, a powerless one, with help. The transformation from kill them all to kill this one needed to feel like a genuine philosophical reckoning with everything he was. Instead, it felt like the writers needed a functional protagonist for the final act, and quietly retired his most dangerous qualities to give the audience someone to root for. A character that complex deserved an ending that wrestled, honestly, with what he actually was. And then there's the political collapse, because this is where the show's failure becomes genuinely heartbreaking. The Boys was always a political story, not superficially deeply. Its most important question was never whether Butcher could kill Homelander. It was whether a society that had chosen to worship a fascist god could find its way back from that choice. Season 4 pushed that question to its absolute limit. Homelander had the crowd, the president, the military, millions of people who genuinely wanted him to win. The show was building toward a moment of societal reckoning, not just one man's death, but a culture confronting what it had become. That moment never arrived. Homelander starts his address, gets triggered by one word, father, goes off script, and the plot pivots directly to the Oval Office. No crowd turning, no cultural confrontation, no society reckoning with 7 years of worship and complicity. The show's most politically urgent question, the one that made it genuinely dangerous, was answered with a quiet kill while the world watched on screens. And then, presumably, went about their day. The Boys used to be the show that made you uncomfortable about the world. The finale let the audience off the hook, too. Here's the observation nobody is making, and it's the most uncomfortable thing about this finale. The Boys built its entire identity on mocking the superhero genre, on exposing the corporate machinery behind heroic myths, on showing what happens when you pull back the curtain on the spectacle. It was the show that constantly pointed at Marvel and DC and said, look at how they manipulate you. Look at how they give you what you want instead of what's true. And then, The Boys ended exactly like a Marvel movie. The heroes won, the villain died powerless, everyone got their ending, and the world was saved. Roll credits. The show that spent 7 years mocking Marvel gave us a Marvel ending. The show that spent 7 years deconstructing the hero's journey gave us the hero's journey. That's not just a disappointment. That's an irony so complete it almost feels intentional. Almost. Here's what I want to be honest about, because this isn't a hate letter to The Boys. It's something more complicated than that. The Boys was a genuinely great show. At its best, Season 2's Stormfront arc, Season 3's Soldier Boy reveal, the crowd scene in Season 4, it produced television as smart, as visceral, and as politically sharp as anything streaming has ever delivered. It earned every viewer it had. But great shows earn the right to great endings. And The Boys, specifically because of how deliberately it built its promises, deserved a finale that operated at the level of its best moments. Instead, it gave us something safe, something manageable, something that resolved the plot without honoring the vision. 7 years, 5 seasons, millions of people who genuinely invested in this world, and what they got wasn't a disaster. It was something almost sadder than that. It was fine. And after 7 years of a show that was never just fine, fine isn't good enough. But maybe I'm wrong. Drop it in the comments. Did The Boys earn its ending? Or did 7 years deserve something bigger? And if you're not subscribed yet, you know what to do.